Hey guys, I'm the 50s Kid. This is a 2001 Kia Sportage. In the previous video, I removed the cylinder head so that it could go to the machine shop and get rebuilt. It has come back from the machine shop and it's all ready to go. I've cleaned up the intake manifold a little bit as well. Everything's ready to go back in the car, so let's get started. So as you can see, I've done some block preparation since you've last seen it, but not all of it. I have taken off the head gasket and I've cleaned a little bit of the graphite off just with some lacquer thinner. You can see that there's still some on it. I also taped this off and I sprayed everything down with my pressure washer because it was so greasy and oily and there was just grease and dirt on everything. So I sprayed all that off and you can see it's much cleaner. You'll also notice that the tops of the pistons look a little different. That's because I sprayed those with lacquer thinner or I put lacquer thinner into the cylinders and I let it sit there overnight. And when I came out in the morning, a lot of the carbon had just been sort of dissolved and broken up, you know, not fully dissolved, but definitely broken up to the point where I'm gonna be able to get most of it out of there. Just when I go and clean everything up, you can see it's just sort of powderized now, whereas it was caked on before. So yeah, that lacquer thinner is really great stuff, you know. So I'm just going to clean everything up. I'm going to use a green roll-off disc for this. So I'm just going to clean everything up. And so real quick before I started, I took a utility blade and I held it vertically and I just used it to scrape up all the big chunks of graphite that were still kind of left on the head or the block. So you just do it like this vertically so that you don't put scratches or grooves in it and just scrape off all the big chunks of graphite. Now that that's gone, so this is cylinder number 1. As you can see, it's just, I can actually feel this right here with my finger. It's just a little bit kind of corroded, I guess. And you can see that there's basically no crosshatch left that's really visible. So, you know, the block, honestly, it should have been pulled out and at least honed so that it could have new crosshatching, maybe change the rings, but that's just not in the budget for this one. This engine is just, this whole car it's not going to last that much longer, you know, or at least we don't plan to have it that much longer. I think I've said that before. The rebuild on the cylinder head was $200, so this is a $200 job. That's what it is. And that's about as long as it's gonna last, probably just only a little while longer. So I'm only interested in getting this just so clean, just so perfect, because yeah, this is just a budget kind of deal. So I've just been wiping out the cylinders, spraying some carb cleaner on my towel here, and just wiping out the dirt that's in there. It's gotten down in there pretty dirty. These cylinders are really bad, and I'm pretty embarrassed to be putting this back into service, but there's no budget. So I've got them as clean as I can get them. And I've also, since I've wiped out all the oil with solvents at this point, I'm going to put a little oil on the cylinder walls just because I want some lubricant on there. It's probably going to smoke when I first start it up, but I can deal with that. Just gonna run this through and I'll just probably soak up the excess oil here. I bought a new head gasket for like 35 bucks and it came with all the other gaskets too, intake manifold gaskets, exhaust gasket, etc. So parts are really cheap for this car. I also bought a new timing belt and like a whole new timing belt kit. Came with a water pump and 2 new pulleys. That was also $35. And incidentally, if you're curious, a whole like rebuild kit with new pistons, rings, bearings, etc. It's about 250 bucks. on eBay. So yeah, really happy about the price of the parts on this car. So it shouldn't be too bad. And if you take, and I suppose if I took this block to the guys who just did the cylinder head for me, it would probably be pretty affordable too. Not exactly sure. I'm guessing again, probably 200 bucks. So it wouldn't have been too bad. So here we have the rebuilt cylinder head. Like I said, took it to a budget shop, charged me 200 bucks. Actually, they quoted me 220, and for some reason they gave me a discount. I don't remember what the guy said there. One thing I do want to note is, you know, when they reinstalled this cam seal over here, they actually bent the inner lip of it. So good thing I caught that. You gotta be sure, you know, when you go to a shop like that, that you kind of double check some of their work. They said they took 5 thousandths off the head, and the limit I believe is 8 thousandths. So that's all good. The valves are okay. None of them were bent or anything, but if you take a close look at some of these valves here, this one, they're actually like pitted. Let me get you a close-up of that. So this is the number 1 intake valve. You can see a little bit of pitting on it. And this is not a high compression engine. It's only like 9.5 to 1. But if it were a high compression engine, 10.5 to 1, I think I would be a little more worried than I actually am. So only like 3 of the intake valves in total are really pitted like that. And, you know, not ideal, but I think we can get away with it in this engine. The thing I'm really concerned about is hot spots. That could promote hot spots. So yeah, we'll see. The gasket kit came with a new gasket for this port back here. It just kind of covers the oil passage port right there. So just remember to put that on. And there's not much else. We got this line that does come off of here, and I cannot remember which side. Ooh, look at that, all crumbly. It's crumbly because all the ends were crumbly. And look at that. Actually, I think it was probably clogged. Ooh, I didn't even catch that until just now. Anyway, I want to blow this line out. The cooling system on this car was really crudded up, and I flushed it in the past, but yeah, obviously that flush wasn't perfect enough to get rid of this stuff. So yeah, I think I'm not going to put that line on until the head is back in the car. That way I can make sure about which orientation it goes in, because I'm not sure yet, and I'll need to see where it connects up to the intake manifold or the throttle body. The cam sensor snaps into this top one here. And there's just another sensor back there. That's what this lower connector is for. I just need to get it in or aligned or something. Okay, there we go. And then the connector for the coils actually goes in the middle, but I actually broke one of these in here, and I got a replacement one from the junkyard, so I'm gonna switch it out. So here we go, replacement. And that snaps into the middle down here. So goes there and there. Now I can gently put this back. There and there. So head bolts, get a little bit of oil and then go back in. So the tightening sequence is going to be from the center out, and it's going to be in 3 stages. The first one is 27 newton meters, the second one is 54 newton meters, and the final one is 86 newton meters. So I'm just going to show you, I'll show you the final tightening stage. Okay, so I've got everything to 54, and now we're going to go to 86 newton meters. That's it. So basically it was a center out. You know, you go there and then crosswise and then crosswise. Pretty easy. So I could have, or should have, pulled off the water pump last time I was here, but we'll do that now. And get this off the spring. Okay. There's a little bit of rust on everything because I was cleaning it, and I didn't spray the water off with compressed air. Bunch of number 12 bolts. Remember to have your drain bucket underneath there. Oh. I think that's a shorter one. And I think there's one more down below there. Yeah, right here. Interestingly, the bearing is actually kind of nice on there. I don't really feel any chunkiness or hear any noise from it. So it stood up pretty well. Then again, I am peeling off little bits of RTV around here, I think. So maybe that was a replacement. That probably makes sense if it was a replacement. So we got our new gasket, and I'm just going to use a little dab of silicone here and there just to stick the gasket to the water pump so it doesn't fall off when I'm putting it on. But otherwise, you know, you don't need a bead of RTV on this because that's what the gasket's for. It would be overkill to also use RTV on this. Get one of these bolts ready. That short one went up here. I had some bolts that I was saving on the old one, so I'll just transfer those over. So we got our new pulleys. Let's see if there was a little washer on the old one. Nope. Built in. Okay, one hole's bigger than the other. Just hook our little spring on. So we'll get it there for right now. So the timing kit came with this gasket and an O-ring. And I honestly can't figure out where either of these go because this is the gasket for this right here. So I don't know. My timing kit also came with this same O-ring. Or not the timing kit, the head gasket set also came with the same O-ring. So I don't exactly know what this is for. Maybe there are some variants of this system, of this whole engine. I'm not really sure. But since there's nothing to replace, I'm just not going to replace it. So I've got new spark plugs that I'm putting in there, and you can see how much the old ones were corroded. Pretty nasty. And I do like to put a little bit of anti-seize on plugs. It's just my habit to do so. Some manufacturers will say that you're not supposed to do that. I don't care. I do it. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. So I'm going to be putting the valve cover gasket back on just because, you know, I can, and it's not going to interfere with anything, and it'll keep stuff from falling in here. And you want to put a little bit of RTV in the corners here where the half moons are. Because the rubber gasket can't really seal very well up against these corners. Incidentally, these caps right here, there had to be a little bit of RTV on the edges where they went on underneath them. So double check that the RTV is there on all three of these when you get this stuff back from the machine shop. When I got mine back when I was fixing the seal, I noticed there was a little bit of RTV, but not enough in my opinion. So I put a little bit extra on. Yeah, so I got the new gasket on there. Let's make sure that doesn't come out. Look at the contrast between the old valve cover and the new cleaned up head. Pretty crazy. That hot tanking process is really awesome. I mean, you remember how dirty that cylinder head was, guys. In the last video, I did not want to deal with it. I'm just trying to feel and make sure that that gasket is good, and it is. Okay, just the rear four. The torque is not huge on these bolts, so I'm just going to do it by hand. Tell you what, I just feel that gasket compressing, but I don't feel the resistance that I come to expect. Probably because I'm using such a long ratchet. So I'll just do it like this. Trying to do, the same for each. And now that I'm doing it this way, it's a little easier to feel that. I don't want to make those bolts too tight because they're class 6, which I guess is 6.6. They're going to break if I go too heavy on them. Let's put our new gasket on here. One of the things I did when I was disconnecting everything is I unhooked this connector from this bracket here, and then I unplugged what is the knock sensor from it. So it turns out you don't need to do that. You can just take the bolts out of that bracket and just leave everything else as it is. So the only thing we have, I also just reconnected this one of the heater tubes to this bypass pipe, which actually runs behind the engine and goes over into the side, down into the coolant pipe, and over across into the radiator. So that one you don't actually need to disconnect, it's just this other one. And it doesn't matter which one, I don't believe. Well, actually I think it does, but these were in sort of, they were still in the position they were in, so, just make things simpler on yourself. You only need to disconnect the lower one. But yeah, so here we have the two fuel hoses right here, and this is the connector for the harness, the wiring harness for the fuel injectors. So that's just going to get plugged in. The two fuel pipes are going to get plugged in, and that's kind of all there is. So it's actually pretty simple. There's also this coolant pipe here, which will end up going into the throttle body, I believe. And along with the lower intake, we'll have another little coolant bypass pipe around here and various other things. Anyway, let's get it on. So let me talk about this lower intake for a second. As you can see, I've cleaned it up quite a bit. I disassembled everything. These tubes right here had turned to like hard plastic, so I had to cut them out with a utility blade and break them off, and I replaced them with some vacuum lines. So those are good now. and see what else. I stuck the vacuum lines back on here and here for the fuel pressure regulator, this line down here, and then this vapor line here, or fresh air line, whatever it is. I still haven't figured out exactly why these fuel injectors have a vacuum line coming off of them. It's really strange. I guess they're somehow, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've never seen it before, but who cares? I also replaced this fuel hose right here. This is the fuel return line, because that was all dry and crumbly. So we've got our gasket on. This can go back on. I think one of the bolts got bent. I think this one actually is bent a little bit. So since it's an 8mm bolt, or yeah, an 8mm bolt, I'm going to use an 8mm socket and just kind of see if I can bend it a little. Might end up screwing up the threads, but I'll run a thread chaser over it. Okay, nice to have one of these little thread restorer kits. It's one of these. This is not a tap and die set. This is a thread restorer kit. It's basically a set of dull taps and dies. Regular taps and dies are going to actually going to be a little too aggressive. I think that's an 8 by 1.25. Yeah, it is. So that was this one. So if I just get it on there, start to run it down. Okay, looks great. In fact, why don't we go ahead and do this one too. This one was giving me some trouble. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now we can get this guy on. Very nice. So I can see where that connector is right down through here. So I'll be able to put that wiring harness on through there. That should not be a problem. So I was not able to find one of the nuts that I dropped, and I have a replacement for it, but it's got a 13mm head, so I just have to do that one separate. Now there's a coolant pipe that actually bolts down below right here, and it goes behind that bracket, if I'm not mistaken, and it bolts up with two of those bolts that go for this thing. You know what? One thing I want to do before I go ahead is that coolant pipe. Let's not forget that, and I need to be able to get access to put the little bracket thing on. So I probably don't want to bolt that intake manifold down yet. This little coolant pipe. Now the question is, how does it, which one do we think? First of all, where is it? I think it's right here. So if it would go on here, does it come up through here and go into the throttle body? Let's check that. So I don't mind having the ability to check this. I don't mind having bolted it in like that. Throttle body will be right here, and that does look like the way it goes. So all I have to remember is that the longer end with the little bend in it goes up like that. So I'll just take that bolt off, pull the lower intake back off, put this on. We've got our coolant line coming up through there. Got the little pipe down below. The pipe is going to bolt in with two of the lower bolts. Okay, for that water pipe, the front of it, The front of it goes over the little stud that's sticking off the head, and the back of it actually is going to be bolted in with one of the bolts. So that's how that goes. And then there's a bracket behind it. That was the bracket where the whole wiring harness is going to snap into. That bracket actually goes over the rear stud that's on the bottom. So you'll just have to, you just look through the holes right here, and you'll be able to see, and you'll be able to put those things on. I'm just going to get this nut on here so I can have it on. And we're done. Except for a 10 mil bolt that's for the bracket, which actually goes back behind here. Okay, need 2 hands for that. Oh, you know what? There's also a fuel line bracket that goes in there. So you got to put 2 of them in. You want that fuel line not to move around when you go to put the line on. The quick connect line on. I tell you what, that's a pain in the butt. Whew. That sucks, guys. That sucks doing that one. I'm about to say screw it. Okay, I need to go off camera and do this. I'm gonna loosen that lower one there so that I can get more play in the bracket. So much better. I think that's good enough. I'm gonna put the fuel lines on last because I remember them being a little bit in the way of things. I just slipped that lower radiator line on there, or the heater hose. So let's get our little harness in here. Just goes down through here. I've got the little clips in it. Those should push on, and they do. Oop, that one popped off a little. So these two go up here, and these go down below, as does this. I forget where this goes. One of them's for, there's an oil pressure switch. Let's get this plugged in first. We'll figure the rest out. I didn't hear it snap, but I think it's in. Not remembering what the other ones, oh, I do remember. This goes on the front right here. This is the oil pressure switch. So that goes in front of this. Right there. Okay. Water tube. Let's see what happened to that lower one. It's down here. Make sure that's stuck up in here, so we can get it on. So at this point, I think I can go ahead and connect the fuel lines. Should be this one and this one. Here. Pull on them, make sure they don't pop off, and they don't. What else? What else? I think that is it for that. So we can put on the upper intake, and we have a gasket for that, new gasket. Upper intake. There were new gaskets for inside here and inside there. Incidentally, if you can't figure out how to get the throttle body off, it's actually, there's a little bolt behind the old gasket right there. So you got to take that out. It's an Allen. So gonna get our coolant lines hooked back up, which is always a little tricky. You gotta flip it upside down like this. And this hose back here seems like that's in the way. I just have to force it, bend it back. I guess so. The longer ones go in there. By the way, if you're wondering how I stayed organized for this whole project, I bagged and tagged each group of bolts that I took off. So this bag was the upper intake, you know, just a couple of bolts to each bag. But that way you don't get confused. We got some nuts here. So we've got 2 nuts for this front bracket right here, and we should have another bolt for that as well. There's a 10 mil bolt, which I believe is for here, which I believe is for this, which I believe needed to go up through here, which sucks, but that's no big deal. Let's just do this. Pull it out. Go through here like this, or up through here. I think we can. We should be able to. Yeah. No problem. Didn't this go that way? I don't know, we'll figure it out. But this 10 mil bolt definitely, okay, goes here. So we have two bracket bolts. You know, honestly, guys, I am not, hang on, this little vacuum cap that came off back here. I really don't want to put the bolts on the back bracket right here, because I don't think they're necessary. And it's just a pain in the ass if you have to get them off again. So screw those, you know, don't need them. Got this little bracket here that also has a little pipe for vacuum hose. Vacuum line right there. I tried to get that lower bolt out that was broken off in the head, but I just couldn't do it. It was too cockeyed. That's it for that. So yeah, this is the bolt for the bracket in the back, but I'm gonna skip that. Let's see, we got a line here. I think it goes over to the brake booster. That's evap line here. Returns the fuel vapors into the intake. I think that's kind of it for that. I see no reason why we can't put this upper intake tube on now. Before we do that, let's put the PCV valve back into the valve cover. I replaced this line also because the other one was hard as a rock. You know, this is going in a little bit easy. I'm wondering if that was part of the cause of our vacuum leak. Or our oil leak. that boot. I remember replacing that boot though. All right, what I'll do is I'll just make a mental note to replace it again, make sure I get the correct part. But for right now, we're just going to run with it. I kind of want to put this whole thing back at the same time. It's a little hard to get it on there. Oh, we need the bracket back there first. The bracket for the throttle linkage. Oh, wow, that's what happens when you're a little too tired. Is that gonna hold? That's not gonna hold. Okay, I think that effectively ended things for tonight. I will have to get that out and solve the problem. Oh, I hope I don't have to take the valve cover off to do that. I might have to, so that sucks. But don't worry, I will solve that problem and finish the rest. So let's get this little plate on. Got to be careful with these. They're, you know, number 6, or it's not 6. It's like 6 point something in metric. But they're, you know, they're gonna break. So this pulley needs to be this way when we want to get the timing belt on. It needs to be stretched out as far that way as possible. And we need to get our other pulleys on. So the trick here is we want to get these 2 notches aligned with the top, but there's a, you know, an intake and an exhaust mark on each one. So the exhaust one, when this is on the top, the E is going to be on the top. So since that's on the bottom, the E is on the bottom, I'm going to put it that way. That way when I flip it around, it'll be correct. Right there, about there. We'll get it in place in a second. So for this one, I'll put the eye this way. I'm gonna look up torque for this real quick. So these are 47 to 65 Newton meters. I don't know why they give you a range like that. It's kind of weird, but I'm just gonna do 60 Newton meters. That's good. So, not really necessary. Just, you know, make them tight. So we're gonna come in there like that. Now, we need to get the tension on this top side. We need to get it correct. So, right there. And it does help if you have like a little clip or a C-clamp to kind of hold those on. I used to have some somewhere. Let me dig something up. I knew I had something. See, just wanted to use something like that. So now that we're there, maybe if we go a little farther like that, that might be it. And if I come backwards on this one here, let me just clip this on like that, Come backwards on these two a little. Oh, that's not gonna work, is it? I'm gonna come here. I'm just gonna hold it right here. Let me put this around like this. Man, it's super inconvenient that these valves are kicking over like this. Yeah, we're just a couple of teeth too much, too far. Okay, if we're just a little bit past on that one, I'm gonna go just a little past on this one, and I think that is gonna be it right there. So if we're down like that, that should be it. So I'm going to get these belts tensioned, or get the belt tensioned. Now, what I didn't do was make sure that we were at top dead center on number one. I totally forgot the other day that there was that mark missing from the crank pulley. So let me spin the crank pulley around. I'm gonna get these bolts off. I want to spin the crank pulley around and see if I can see if there is a mark somewhere on it, because there should be. There should be a mark on that crank pulley. So I'm going to spin it around, see if I can find the mark. Okay, yeah, I do see the mark. It's a little white dot. And I remember that I went just a little bit past top dead center. So we're just about right there. And we can double check this. Well, we should be double checking this, and I think I will. So I'm regretting actually putting the spark plugs and everything in here because I just wasn't thinking. So let me pull those out real quick. All right, so I just pulled out number one, and I am glad that I did because I was wrong. That mark is not the mark. So it's a good thing to check that. Wow. Oh, I see it. No, I don't see it. Okay, I'm wrong again. Wow. Oh, it's the wood. Is the Woodruff key? Yeah, it's the Woodruff key. Okay. Oh no. Okay, I'm wrong again. Now I see a distinctive notch. Pardon me. It's my first day. My first day, guys. Here, let me show you. So you can see down here, this little notch has to align with this mark right there, and that's it. And you can see that it also happens to be where the Woodruff key is almost aligned. Well, basically, yeah, that's where it's aligned. So that's what you got to do. Now it's actually going to be easier to get the belts on the bottom pulley first, and then get it, you know, tight up here. It's much easier to do it that way. So that's the way we're going to do it. Just want to get tension on that side. It'll sort of hold itself on the bottom pulley. That's why you want to do it that way. Well, for the most part it will. You got to get it around. And I probably didn't loosen up this pulley enough, now that I'm thinking about it. The little tensioner pulley. Probably need to get that with pry bar. So now it's stuck open. So we need to move over one on this camshaft. Okay guys, it was particularly difficult to slip that new belt on there. Ultimately, I figured out that I didn't have this pulley pushed far enough to the side. You've got to get it all the way over there. Otherwise, you really just don't have room. What you got to do is put the belt over this pulley here and pull this way, right here. Just pull tension on it while you're slipping it over this side. If you don't pull tension on it, then it's just going to tend to slip one tooth on the bottom cog, on the crankshaft cog there. So I had it there, and I had the ratchet up here, and I was sort of leaning down on it in order to rotate the cam, either leaning down on it or pushing up, I forget which way, in order to get the cam, the alignment mark aligned with the white mark right there. And then when I had it on there with my third hand, I slipped this on, still keeping tension on here. And then I was able to slip it over this cog right here, and I needed to slip it off of the pulley a little bit. And then I got it on this cog, and then I was able to finally push the belt over the tensioner pulley. That was the very last step. So I believe that I'm good now. And what you need to do is loosen up this pulley, the bolt on this pulley. On the tensioner. And now we're going to spin the crankshaft around and make sure that the timing marks line up. So we need to go up and down. Well, we need to turn this over twice. You're going to see this go up and down twice. And I can feel that compression because I only took one spark plug out. And it looks like the intake mark is wrong, which sucks because I didn't want that to be the case. So it looks like I'm just like one tooth behind on the intake. So I will have to redo this, which is not cool. Man, I was really hoping that wouldn't be the case. I'm gonna get this thing pushed all the way over. And let's see. I don't know, let's see if I can skip a tooth here somehow. No, I can't. It just needs to be one tooth, one more tooth. So actually we need to let some tension off of here. That was probably why I was having so much trouble slipping it over this cog, or the tensioner pulley down here, because we were just one tooth off. So I think that's where we need to be. And if we just pull tension back this way with it, then we can slip it over. So hopefully, yeah, that should be it. So we got tension loose on there. Yeah, we're good now. We're perfectly aligned now. So to set the tension on the tensioner, they want you to rotate until the exhaust cam S mark is aligned with the white mark. And I guess the camshaft is now putting the proper tension on this pulley right here. So this is when you tighten it. It's like 30 pounds of tension. So that feels good now. So I had put the two bolts for this cover into the water pump, so I knew which ones were which. It's my habit to do that whenever possible. You just got to make sure that key is lined up. These ones are tricky. So how do you tell which bolt goes where? Because they're all different lengths. You just stick them through and see, make sure they all stick out about the same amount. You know, you can't take a short one, obviously, and stick it in the long one because it's not going to poke through. So that's basically how you do it. And I'm going to try to just do it like this. These are those number 6s, so I'm not going too crazy with them. The head of the bolt has a 6 on it. That's what I'm talking about. Some of the bolts on this car have an 8. Those are 8.8s. Those are fine. 6s are just, you're gonna break them if you go too heavy with the torque. Already did that one. Yeah, okay. So we have a new gasket for this. Let me go and clean this off. Okay. This little hose goes on here, back here. All the pipes on this thing were deteriorated on the ends, but still reusing them. Yeah, that goes that way. This wire probably goes underneath because it looks like it does. It's underneath like that? Yeah. And this cover went over here. And this bracket probably went up over here. I did not need to take this bolt out originally. So it's for the alternator. What else, guys? Get the pulleys back on. Get our pulleys back on, or our belts back on. Should be one down here for the power steering. Yeah. Check the belt tension, make sure you can just bend it a little bit. Okay, of the remaining two belts, one is a V belt and one is a serpentine belt. So alternator belt goes on first, then the AC belt. There's that little pulley down below. So that alternator belt also needs the fan pulley in order to do it. And it looks like this, I forgot about this bracket here that goes into here. So I got to take that, make that loose. So remember that that's for that. So yeah, these are the three huge bolts. I'm going to get this belt loose around here. Okay, these are offset. I feel like they're offset. There we go. So we're ready for that pulley to go on once we get the fan on. You know what, I don't remember if I made this tight. I didn't. Okay. And now the thermostat housing. I do not have a new gasket for that, but it should be fine because this gasket is relatively new. You know what? I didn't put this clip, I didn't move this clip back in. That little clip right there for the hose. Just remembered. Okay. So the warranty on this exhaust manifold is expired. Can't get a replacement. Don't really care too much right now. Okay, the two fun ones, little reach around ones. Make sure you put a little anti-seize on the O2 sensor. This little harness needs to get snapped up into here. So guys, this is actually a different valve cover because when I went to put the throttle cable into this one, I actually broke off one of the bolts yesterday, and I tried to get it out with an easy out, but it went off center and then it broke off in there. And yeah, so this is junk. I just went and got a different one at a junkyard today for 17 bucks. Happens to be half off day, so that was pretty cool. So I've popped that in, and I've gone ahead and connected up the linkage and everything. I'm gonna put the spark plugs in, put the coils in, and then put the intake tube on and fill the thing with oil. You know, I'll drain the oil actually because we've got some lacquer thinner in there. So I'm gonna drain the oil, put new oil in, put fresh coolant in, and then we'll start her up. Okay guys, I've got everything put together. Got the coolant in there, fresh oil. We are ready to go. Got the fuel pump plugged back in, so I'm gonna give it some primes and then we'll get it started up. Got you on the camera mic right now. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this really well. Now let's start it. There we go. So the valve train is going to be really noisy at first because all the lifters are pumped down. I took them all apart to clean them out. Well, just got back from a drive, guys, and the valve train's all quieted down now, as you can tell. It's a lot quieter. Got a little bit of oil right here on the valve cover. I don't know what that's from. Oil cap is tight. Maybe there's a gasket on the oil cap that is going bad or something. Maybe that was just oil on the valve cover that just kind of got loose because it got all hot now. Because I don't really see a source for that oil. But, you know, we'll keep an eye on that. Anyway, let me get this thing taken apart because we got to do a compression test. So guys, I just took a look at the service manual real quick, and it says to actually crank it for 10 seconds with your foot on the gas, you know, so that the throttle plate is fully open. So I just did that on number 1, and you can see what I got to here. We're at, you know, 173 PSI. So I'm sure the other ones would be exactly the same. So don't do it for, 6 strokes like I was doing it. Do it for 10 seconds. See what your maximum that you can possibly get is. Just make sure you do the same for all of the cylinders. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to do a leak down test. There's no point. The service manual says that the normal compression is supposed to be 164 PSI. The minimum is 116 or 114 or something like that. 114 PSI. And the maximum difference between cylinders is 26 PSI. So we're all good, everything's fine. There's obviously going to be blow by on this thing, but I don't think it's affecting compression at all, obviously. So I'm not gonna redo 2 through 4 because you get the idea. Problem solved. So this job cost about $300 at the end of the day. It was $200 for the rebuild, $35 for the timing belt, $35 for the gaskets, $10 for coolant, $12 for oil, $10 for spark plugs, another $5 for some hoses and whatnot. I did have to pay another $17 for the replacement valve cover, but just a little bit over $300 for a rebuild. Honestly, not bad. And the car drives like it's brand new. So the girl who drives this car is gonna be really happy. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I wanna welcome you. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.